Welcome back to Design 103 CAD Fundamentals. In this video we're going to be taking a look at AutoCAD templates. Now, this past week in class we talked a little bit about templates and why you might want to use them, but in case you've forgotten, templates are nice because they keep you from having to change your standard settings in AutoCAD every single time you start a new file. Now, normally when you're doing a drawing you would want to set up your layers, your line types, your snap, your grid, maybe some of your O-snaps. And I like to turn this nav cube off every time in our videos. But if I use an AutoCAD template to start out with, all of that stuff is already going to be set up when I create my new drawing. So it really can save you a lot of time. So in this video we're going to look at how to set up an AutoCAD template, how to save it after we set it up, and then how to create a new drawing based on the template that we've made. So to start out with, I've just got a new drawing here in AutoCAD. This is just the standard drawing that opens up when you launch AutoCAD, so I haven't done anything special yet. So you'll have something very, very similar to this when you first open up AutoCAD. So I haven't done any changing yet to my settings. So to start out with, I'm, like I said, going to turn off this navigation cube because I like to leave it off. I find that it's one more thing to click on and accidentally mess up your drawing. So I'm going to turn that off by typing NAVV cube and press enter. And I'm going to go down to the off option and you'll see that disappear. And the next thing I'm going to do is go and set up my layers. So to set those layers up, I need to go into the Layer Property Manager, and there's two ways that I can get to that. I can either type Layer on the keyboard and press enter, or I can go to the Layer Properties Manager button up here on the toolbar. So either way, I'm going to press the button on the toolbar for now, and you'll see the Layer Properties Manager show up. Now, when yours opens up, it may be very small and even look something like that, but you'll want to drag the corner of it here and expand it. So when you see those double arrows, you can click and hold and expand that out so you can really see what all these menus say. And I like to widen some of these menus also so I can read the whole name, because it's hard to change this stuff if you don't know what you're changing. So I like to drag these out a little bit so I can actually read the titles. Okay, now we're going to set up some layers. And in class I recommended 3 layers for now. And those layers were a visible layer, a hidden layer, and a center layer. And each one of those layers is going to be related to a line type that you would typically use in a technical drawing. So to start out with, I'm going to make a new layer and just call it visible. So to make a new layer, I'm going to click on this button right here. And you'll see my new layer pop up, and it automatically allows me to rename it. So I'm going to change the name of this one to visible. And I'm going to leave the color as white. That should be fine. And the line type should be continuous since it's a visible line. And I'll go back up here and hit the new layer button again. And this one I'm going to call hidden. And this will be the layer that I put all my hidden lines on. I like to use red on this typically, but you can use any color you want. You could even leave it white, but I find it's easier to keep track of things when I'm drawing if I use a different color. So I kind of like to use red for my hidden lines. So I'll click on where it says white, and I'm going to come down here and then choose red instead, and hit OK. And then I also need to change my line type. In a technical drawing, whenever you're drawing a hidden line, it should be shown with a dashed line type, not a continuous line type. So to change that, I'm going to click where it says continuous, and that's going to bring up some available line types. Now, I need to load in a line type here that is a hidden line type, and right now that's not an option. So to load in some additional line types, I need to come down here to the load button. So I'm going to click where it says load, and then I'm going to scroll down. All of these are in alphabetical order, so I'm going to scroll down until I find the one that's called hidden. And you'll see there's 3 different choices here. You've got hidden 2, which gives you twice as many hidden lines as a standard hidden would. And you also get hidden X2, which gives you dashes that are twice as long, or you get half as many of them. But for now I'm just going to pick the standard hidden line type and hit OK. And then I want to apply that to my hidden layer. So before I hit OK on this menu, I need to select my hidden line that I've loaded in. And after you get it highlighted, then you can hit the OK button, and you'll see that it applies right here. If you forget to highlight it, this will stay on continuous, and you'll have to click on it and go back in and choose it and hit OK. So if you forget to click it, it's not a big deal, but you will have to go back in the menu to choose it. Then finally I'm going to set up a layer called center. So I'm going to do the new layer button again, and I'll call this one center. This is going to be the layer for all my center lines. And you'll see when I create a new layer in AutoCAD, it automatically keeps the properties of the last layer that I made, which is okay, but we're going to need to change this stuff as well. So for my center lines, I like to make those this neon green color, so I'm going to choose that for my color and hit OK. And then we need to change the line type also. We need to change this from a hidden line type to a center line type. So I'm going to click where it says hidden. And again, center is not an option in here, so I'm going to have to go into the load menu and pull that in. So I'll click the load button again, and once again I'm going to go down until I find center in the alphabetical list, which is right here. So I'll click that, hit OK, and again, I make sure that you click on it so it's highlighted before you hit the OK button. So I'm going to click and highlight center, and then hit OK. And now we should have all of our layers set up. Some people like to add a dimension layer also. Eventually we'll get to where we dimension drawings. Right now it's really not necessary, but if you wanted, so that it would be there in the future, you could go ahead and add that dimension layer in. And I would recommend leaving it with a regular white color and with a continuous line type. So again, you don't have to have this one right now, but eventually we will use it, so you may want to go ahead and put it in there. So after I get all my layers set up, I'm going to click the X up here to close the Layer Properties Manager. And now you can see if you drop down your list of available layers right here, that all the layers we created in the Layer Properties Manager are available now. So whatever layer you see activated here is the one that you're going to be drawing on. So for instance, if I wanted to draw a visible line, I would come down to my visible layer and create that geometry. Or if I wanted to make a circle that was on my center layer, I can activate center and then draw the circle. And you'll see that it automatically applies the line types. Now one other thing that you can adjust in here if you want to is your line type scale. Now the line type scale is going to control how many dashes you see in a center or hidden line type. So for instance, if I put another circle in here with a hidden line type, you'll see that it has a certain spacing between all of the dashes. And you can change that by adjusting the line type scale. So to get to that in AutoCAD, you can type LTS on the keyboard and hit enter. And you'll see right now mine is set on 1. A larger number will give you less dashes that will be longer. So for instance, if I set this to 2 or 3 or 4, let's try 4. I'll hit enter. And you can see how I have less dashes now and they're longer. If I want to have more dashes, I'll type LTS and hit enter. And you can change it to a smaller number. So for instance, I might want to change it to 0.25 and hit enter. And now you can see on this hidden circle that the dashes are so small it almost looks like a continuous line type. So you want to set your dashes to something that you can see from a good distance. So for instance, if I was zoomed all the way back to here, I can't even tell that this is a hidden line anymore. So I may want to change my line type scale back to 1 or something close to that so that I can actually tell it's a hidden line. But for the purposes of your template, you'll probably be okay leaving that line type scale set on 1. Now one other thing that I'm going to set is my grid and snap settings. We're getting to the point now where you really shouldn't have to use the grid and snap that much anymore. You should be getting to where you're using your O snap and your polar tracking when you're drawing things. So I'm going to turn off my rectangular snap and turn off my grid in my template. So if I need to turn off the snap, I can do that with F9. Right now mine is already turned off. And if I need to turn off the grid, I can do that with F7, or I can click the button right down here on the bottom. So I'm going to click that to turn off my grid. And then I would recommend making sure that when you save your template, you have the visible layer selected, because most of the time the lines you're drawing are going to be going onto that visible layer. That's your most common layer. So I would go ahead and select that by default so that whenever you jump into a new drawing from your template, you'll automatically have that layer selected and be ready to draw. One other thing that I'm going to set is my O-snap settings. And the O-snap is right down here. So whenever you see a line, like for instance if I'm going to draw a new line and I hover over the end of this, you'll see where I get these little boxes or triangles pop up. That's your O-snap, and that's letting me know, for instance, that if I was to draw a line with the end point beginning right here, that they would be perfectly touching end to end. Or for instance, if I hover over the middle, the triangle tells me that this is exactly the center of the line. So if I wanted to draw a line that bisects this, I know that that triangle tells me that it's exactly the center of the line. So I can click there and draw, and create lines that are in the exact locations I want them by using my O-snaps. And you can create other geometry too. I can create circles or rectangles. It just depends on what you're drawing. But those O-snaps will help you lock into things and keep them perfectly aligned. So you can see no matter how far I zoom in on this now, those points are connected right here. And that's because I've used my O-snap. So you should get to where you use your O-snap more and your rectangular snap less. So when I do the O-snap settings, I'm going to right click down here on the O-snap button and go to settings. And the one that I recommend people leave on is the top 5 but skip node. So I'm going to turn off all of them to start with. And I'm going to turn on the top 5 but skip node. 1, 2, 3, skip node, 4, 5. Some people also like to turn on perpendicular, but it gets on my nerves sometimes because it snaps when I don't want it to. So I've gotten to where I like to leave perpendicular off. But if you wanted to turn perpendicular on, some people leave that one on a lot also. But I found that these 5 are a good set of standard O-snaps that you can use all the time in AutoCAD and will be pretty much everything you need while you're drawing. So I'm going to select those 5 and hit OK. And then I'm going to adjust my polar tracking angle also. The polar tracking is whenever you're drawing, you see your cursor snap to some increment. So for instance, right now you'll see mine snapping right to 90 degrees, or it's snapping to 75 degrees, 60 degrees. And you can change that degree setting by coming down here to the polar tracking menu and right-clicking. So I'm going to come down here to the polar tracking, right-click, and whatever angle you want to snap to, you can choose here. Right now mine is set on increments of 15 degrees, which is a pretty good setting. You might also like to try 30 or 45, but for right now I'm going to leave mine on 15. That way if I have to draw a line at a 15 or 30 or 45 degree angle, I can guarantee that I'll be able to snap to that angle while I'm drawing. So 15 is a pretty good all-around setting. That's what I'd recommend you set your polar tracking on for your template. Now that I have all my settings the way I want them, I'm going to go and save this drawing file as a template. You can see right now at the top, its name is drawing1.dwg, and that tells me that if I were to save it, it would save as a drawing file. But we want to save this as a template file, not a drawing file. So I'm going to come up to the Application menu and click on the big red A. And once that expands, I'm going to come down to the Save As menu, and you'll see that I have an option in here for Drawing Template. The drawing templates have a different file extension on the end. Instead of being a .dwg file, they're going to be a .dwt file, and that tells you that it's a drawing template file. So I want to save this drawing as a template file so that we can save all the settings that we just put together. So I'm going to click where it says Drawing Template, and then it's going to ask me where I want to save it. And it's probably going to make the most sense if I save this on my flash drive. Right now you can see it defaults to the directory on my hard drive in my computer where all my other AutoCAD templates are saved. But if you want to be able to take your template with you wherever you go, you need to save it on your flash drive instead. So I'm going to pick the drop-down menu up here and go down to my F, flash drive. And then I'm just going to call this Design 103 Template. And I'm just going to save that on my flash drive, and you'll see down here it's got a DWT file extension. So I'll click Save when I get that typed in. And you're going to have a template options box pop up here. For now you can just hit OK. And you'll see up here the name of the file changes, and it has a .dwt file extension. Now one thing you need to be careful of when you're in your template file is that you don't draw anything in here before you exit the file. Because anything that I've drawn in here is going to be saved as part of my template. So for instance, if I had a circle drawn right here and I saved my template, that's going to become part of my template. So every time I open up a new drawing from my template file, that circle would be in there because it's saved as part of my .dwt file. Now I don't want that circle to be there, so I'm going to make sure that I don't have anything drawn in my model window when I save my template. Now since we've already saved our template file, I'm going to go ahead and close it by hitting the X over here in the corner of my model space. And I'm not going to save my changes because I've already saved them, so I'm going to hit No. And then to make a new drawing, let's say that I want to make a new drawing from my template file. I'm going to come up here and click on this blank sheet for New. And then once this pops up, it's going to ask you to select a template. Now up till now we've probably been using the AutoCAD template for everything, but the problem with the AutoCAD template is that we have to change a lot of the settings before we can draw anything. So instead of choosing the AutoCAD template this time, I'm going to go to my flash drive and I'm going to choose my template that we just created, my Design 103 template. And once I highlight that, I'll hit open. And you'll notice that I get a new drawing, but it's got a .dwg extension. So it used my template and created a new .dwg file based on all the settings in my template. You can see down here my grid and snap are off, the grid is turned off, the nav cube is not there, we turned it off. And if I go to my layers, you'll see that my new drawing I've created has all those layers in there already. If I go to my Layer Properties Manager, they all have the right line type already as well, they're the right color. So this saves you the time of having to set all that stuff up every single time. So I could go ahead and create my drawing, whatever it might be, and when I get done I can hit the save button and it would save as a .dwg file wherever I want to. So for instance, if this was a lab, I would call it lab whatever, lab Z maybe, and I would save that and it would become a .dwg file. Now one thing you need to be really careful of when you make a new drawing from your template file is that you're not going to the Open menu. Because if you go to the Open menu and select your template file, so for instance I've gone to the Open menu, I go to my flash drive, and if you open up your template file, instead of going to the new, it's going to make changes to your template file. So for instance, if I've gone to the Open menu and selected my template, and I start drawing in here and hit the save button, it's going to be saving all of that back to my template, which I do not want to do. Because then anytime I use my template for anything, all of that stuff that I've drawn is going to show up as part of my template. So make sure when you want to create a new drawing from your template that you're going to the New menu, not the Open menu. Open should only be used for drawings that you've created that have a .dwg file extension. Don't use the Open for your template file unless you want to make permanent changes to that template file. If you just want to create a new drawing based on your template file, then you need to use the New Sheet button and click that, and then you'll navigate to your template file and select it. And you'll see up here that creates a new .dwg file, and none of these changes that I make in here will be saved back to my template. They'll all be saved to a new drawing file. So that's just kind of a short how-to on creating a template and using it to make a new drawing. So try setting up your own template, and that way you can use it for the rest of your lab assignments for the semester, and it should save you some time. So hope that helps, and we'll see you next time.